Well, hello and welcome to episode number 328 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show, a flying club in Norfolk aims and launches a new course to get old aviation off the ground. There's a world first coming out of Dubai as free COVID medical cover is offered by one airline, and we're going green with an Eco-Demonstrator and a 70-seater hybrid. In the military, we're keeping with the green theme, and we explore the possibility of a battery-powered fighter jet, and a cow gets stuck in a riverbank. Nev takes us back to Gibraltar as we revisit his chat with Trevor Hammond and the NATS General Manager, and Matt and I share our experience at the world's first ever drive-in airshow. So joining me this week in the PT UK Master Studio with lots of broken laptops, it's Matt Smith.
Yes, that is. I think that's the theme for today, isn't it? Yes, is all of the. My lovely MacBook has just gone tech, basically, which is proving to be slightly challenging. So apologies if things go terribly wrong today. I'm going to blame it on a mass tech failure of laptops. We were literally scrabbling around like Carlos was about to jump in his van, bring me another laptop, just so that we could get on air, because. Yeah, I thought for 1 minute I was going to be reading the show notes on my phone at one point. I don't know what's going on here. But never mind.
Just as well you've not got a Nokia 3310 then, otherwise you would be...
Excuse me, I'll have you know, the Nokia 3310 was a quality brick, I'll have you know.
Nev's laughing, he still has his.
Yes,
anyway,
absolutely.
Joining us this week, he's back from his Bahamas holiday. It's Neville Bounds.
Well, it wasn't quite that. It was
the
Scotland,
Bahamas.
and I think we're allowed to go there at the moment, aren't we? Probably.
No, probably not. No,
Scotland was very nice indeed. Auntie Nicola let us into the country, and 1,700 miles later, we are back. And the weather was superb. A couple of days of the odd bit of rain here and there, but the Scottish countryside, especially around the Highlands and that part of the country, takes a lot of beating, and absolutely fantastic, and great to be back.
It's one of my favourite places to go, actually. I've got one of my best friends actually lives very near to a place called Kenmore, and I remember spending one Easter like on it in his like holiday home that he had that overlooked overlooked Loch Tay, and it was just beautiful. It's so vast, isn't it? That's it. There's so much of it that you feel like you're going to a completely different world, don't you?
Yes, the only thing I would say is that most of the locals don't have time for people like me, because I just wanted to drive quite slowly to enjoy the view, but they're in a rush to get home or to go from A to B, so they weren't really tolerating my ride.
Did you have any haggis, Nev, or not?
No, I gave that a miss. I have had that before. It's not one of my favourites.
Oh, I love haggis. I'm a big fan of haggis, I am.
Okay.
That's because you like weird foods, Matt.
How rude! Yeah, this coming from the guy who gets really stressed about curry. Seriously.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Richard Adams says you weren't savaged by midges by any chance.
No, I wasn't actually, which is unusual because down by the lock it can get like that.
Yeah.
But no, not at all. We were pretty well escaped all of that, I'm pleased to say.
Well, quite.
I'm glad you had a good time, Nev.
Try to say that 3 times over after 3 beers.
Well, quite.
Savage by midges. Savage by midges.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, yes. Don't get midges and midgets mixed up, because that's a whole different meal.
Anyway,
sorry, Graham Haley says nothing wrong with haggis. See, Graham Haggis is with me on that one, Haley.
Graham Haggis. Anyway,
I've only had 2 beers, I promise.
Moving swiftly on before we get a G rating. Anyway. Is joining us this week, as you heard just then, it is, of course, the man who loves to throw people out of his aircraft. Oh. It's Armando.
That's not a nice thing to say.
What an outstanding segue, Carlos. I've literally done more of that than money-earning flying.
Wow.
No, so last Saturday, after we recorded on Friday, I went down to Steph's drop zone, and what a different operation. Totally awesome. They had... just a much bigger operation than we have at my drop zone, and I actually got to fly the Otter, the Twin Otter, or as Captain Nick says, boop, We won't say that word on here. But yeah, it was cool. That's my first time flying an Otter, and it's busy. So Steph, the gentleman that she flies with, had nothing but compliments about her flying abilities, and it is a straight up old school airplane with a lot of moving of gadgets and levers, and it's all analog and very, very cool. Yeah, other than that, man, it was so cool. So cool.
I'm guessing that's the same as the one they use in the Maldives, Armando, for the float planes, the similar kind of
I think
setup.
so.
Yeah,
I think there's probably different setups. Some of them are more, I don't know, modernized than other ones. This one seemed to be pretty old school, which is the kind of flying that I like to do. But yeah, and then on Sunday I did my own skydive flying. I'll do that again this Sunday. And other than that, just sat reserve in Atlanta with the family, which was just a pretty cool time. I didn't get called out, which means we just got to enjoy Atlanta as much as we could in a social distancing and socially responsible.
This is a really, really nosy question that you can tell me to go away if you want, Armando. But
it's not like anybody's listening or anything.
Well, no,
go ahead, Matt.
Good point. Yes, absolutely. Is it when you do the sky, because you do, as you say, you do an awful lot of the sort of the skydiving stuff. Is that all voluntary, or do you get a bit of beer money for that?
No, I'm an employee. I get paid.
Oh, that's all right.
No, we do get paid. I think people do it for different reasons. I think the Steph is, well, we could just ask Steph. She's in the chat room, but
yes,
she's getting a lot of great experience with some multi-engine turbine time. I kind of do it just because it's fun. It's good stick and rudder flying. My field is the 2,000 foot grass strip, which is real similar to a lot of the strips out there in the UK. So I'm comfortable, but for me, airline flying is great, but it's very much like take off, put the autopilot on, and you're just a systems monitor in a good way, right? But I really, really enjoy just kind of manhandling an airplane down to the ground with, surrounded by trees into a grass strip and not forgetting what the rudder does.
Yeah. Yeah, sort of go old school back to sort of physically flying. Yeah.
That sounds like fun, Armando. Hopefully we'll get out next year and I can join you.
Oh, yes.
Fingers crossed.
I'll throw you out of a plane anytime, Carlos.
Yay! I look forward to it.
I can't see you having a parachute strapped to your back being thrown out of an aeroplane. I can't see.
Hell yeah!
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
You've seen, like I say, you've done it. You've said it.
There's someone sitting not too far away from where I am now who will really not be too impressed with that.
I can imagine. Would that be the wife, by any chance?
Yes. But hey ho.
Right.
That's life. That's what Frank Sinatra said.
Okay.
That's
Anyway,
life.
moving on.
Anyway, moving on. So those of you who watch the show may remember that me and Matt, we had a little jaunt out last Saturday to a certain air show. I know. And we actually got to Shuttleworth to the drive-in air show, and luckily we got there early because there was quite a number of cars after we got there, and we had a really, really good day, didn't we, Matt?
Well, we certainly did. I mean, it was such an experience, really. In fact, I tell you what, why don't we share with everyone the experience we had, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. Should we do that? Here we go. So, as I say, this is mine and Carlos's little visit to the Shuttleworth collection.
Welcome, everyone, to the Shuttleworth Drive-In Air Show. And didn't think I'd be saying the words that we'd be sitting at an air show in 2020.
Really well organised event, actually. That's one of the things that surprised me, because as I say, we're in an unusual situation because everybody's arriving in their cars, and like normally whenever you go to an air show you park miles and miles away from the event and then you jump on the bus and you come onto site, and then obviously everybody's crowding for the flight line. Obviously in this situation we sort of queued to get in, so I think there was about 6 cars in front of us, wasn't there, when we first arrived. and then we obviously got directed through to our pitch here, and it's great because we've got like our little pitch is a 5 metre by 5 metre area. The car is just to our left here, and it's great. As I say, we've got the windbreak, so we've got plenty of space. I'm just thinking from a punter's point of view, it's really interesting because you've got plenty of space as a family to stretch out, have a picnic, and or if you're us, obviously piles of tech, because we don't like to do things on the light here, do we? But yeah, it's really nice. There's some food vending areas behind us. Lots of, with any event like this, lots of chemical toilets. But the one thing that's blowing my mind with all of this is how clean everything is. I mean, we've all been to the festival Portaloo, that's usually quite horrendous, and because this is just a different world, isn't it? Look, I managed to waffle on that long. You should be impressed.
There we go. That was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
That was good. That was really good. A really nice day.
It was. Yeah, so
really well organised.
So well organised, really well organised. That's my sort of blow away takeaway from that, really. And I don't know. I mean, personally, there is something about the scrum of the fight line, isn't there? Let's be honest, and sort of watching what's going on. And of course, there were a couple of occasions, as you'll probably notice when we're taking that video, for example. All it takes, like we had, really, where you've got a really tall vehicle that's in front of you, and then suddenly it's really difficult to get some of the. Because actually, Jonathan Warner, who's a couple of photos were actually in there, so thank you, Jonathan, for the photos of the glider that we had. That was stunning as well. Really enjoyed the glider. But because that's all it takes is to have a tall vehicle that's in front of you, and suddenly you're not able to enjoy like what's running down the grass runway, and that was the only negative, if I was to be really hypercritical, was the fact that and yet I know where Jonathan Warner was, because we did have a social distance chat with him, didn't we, at one point, where Jonathan Warner was. He had basically an uninterrupted view of the runway, and I mean, some of those photos that he got were just stunning. His Flickr feed, I think, is somewhere on Twitter. So if you're not following Jonathan Warner already, I think it's Johnny Copter or something. Is it on Twitter? I seem to remember. It was a really nice day, and I'll tell you what was nice as well. Obviously, when we go to these air shows, we're there trying to sort of get interviews with people and get things up, like content for the show. Basically, that's the main reason why we go. And I'll be honest, it's the first time in such a long time that you and I have been to an air show where we were able to basically enjoy the air show, because we weren't having to run off to go and do sort of interviews and stuff. So I mean, it was very different. I do miss the air show in its traditional form, but it was very refreshing. And hey, let's be honest, anything like this, and I didn't realise it was a world first. I genuinely didn't realise that we'd rocked up at a world first event.
Yeah, it was, like Matt said, it was well put together. Everything was everything flowed really well, Matt. There was no lengthy gaps in between the aircraft that were on display. Everything just took off straight after each other, and the show continued right through until we left, literally just as the sun was setting.
Yeah, it was a wonderful day. So I think they're doing one again very soon, aren't they?
In August,
yeah,
I believe.
Absolutely. So if you've got any sense, guys, it's a great day for the family. It was £50 for the whole car. That was the thing. It wasn't just like, I mean, I think tickets tend to be sort of £25 a piece anyway. But if you're taking the family, to be able to take the whole car, so it was basically £50 per car. So if you go on your own, obviously it's suddenly an expensive day. But you take your family. 2nd of August, I think, is what Graham Haley is saying in the chat room there. So but I recommend going if anybody's free on the 2nd of August. Really enjoyed it.
So we're going to say hello to everyone in the live YouTube chat room this evening. All the family members in there, all not in nice and early this evening. Lane Street, hello to you, Lane. Auntie Liz, Jenny in Rome. We've got, just scrolling down, Dr. Steph's in the chat room, obviously keeping an eye on things. Stephen Ivy as well. I hope you're well, Stephen. James J. It's the first time that he's made it to a live show, so hello to you, James J. Masha's in there. Graham Haley. I didn't miss anyone else. Scrolling down. Lane Street. I think I said Lane. John Jester. Hello to you, John Jester. He's taking time out from flying, I think. Richard Adams. Alan White. Hello to you, Alan, as well. Jonathan Warner, our resident photographer from Saturday as well, is also in the chat room. Rakon is in the chat room. And actually, Rick Bell is also in the chat room tonight.
A fleeting visit, I think, from him.
A fleeting visit from Rick. So hello to you, everyone who has joined us in there tonight. 24th of July is the date, and just coming up to 7:20 this evening. So thanks to everyone who's joined us. And don't forget as well, if you're listening to the audio version and want to join us on our YouTube feed live, just take yourselves over to YouTube and search for Plane Talking UK. And also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Not physically, but just click on it.
Well, if you've got a touch screen,
also, you can, and also hit the bell icon as well, which is right next to it, to be notified when we go live, and then you can join us all in the chat room. So we have got actually another little piece of information about that competition. So Matt, we've got a competition running, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, absolutely. So you have basically between now and episode 330, which is rapidly approaching, so make sure you get them in soon, to send us in something that we can play out on the show, basically. The theme is Aviation in My Life. It's a very loose guide, so it can be anything you like, really, but loosely attached to aviation. Maybe the first time that you fell in love with aviation, because we want to learn a little bit more about our listeners. That's what we want to do. Any feedback, written, audio, it doesn't have to be recorded, it can be written down as well. Audio visual will do. You'll be entered into the draw to win a staggering £150 voucher for the Plane Reclaimers website, kindly donated by Andrew Keegan, who was on us back with us on episode 324. I think it's also worth mentioning, it's not just open to to people here in the UK. It is open to everyone, literally everyone. They will ship everywhere, basically, and their postage rates are very, 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 very good, actually. We've had a few items arrive. I've had a few items arrive today that arrived in the studio. In fact, shall I get it? One moment.
Yes, you can actually. While you're on that subject there, Matt, on that. So, Plane Reclaimers. If you take yourselves actually over to the Plane Reclaimers shop, they've actually got some really good stuff on their shop, which has been added this week, which you can go in and purchase for that £150. And actually, on that note, if you are a lover of flight deck seats, as in the seats that the pilots sit on the flight deck, they've actually got the actual full sheep fur covered flight deck seats on there, which you can actually purchase to have at home, which is really quite good. And I'm sure And yeah, that also comes with a free divorce if I purchase that. So I'm probably going to give that a miss.
Right, so here we go. So this is one item. There was two items that arrive in here. One for me, one for producer John. And this is what arrived in my studio today.
Oh, that's so good.
Actually, seriously, because this was off a 747, wasn't it, Carlos?
It was, yeah.
Now, geeks out there, somebody help me, because I want to power this up and put it above my door here. Somebody tell me what voltage this is and whether it's AC or DC, because I haven't got a Scooby-Doo.
That should run off mains.
12 volts, or it's going to be 110.
Yeah, it's not going to be mains, Carlos. I know it's definitely not mains, but I don't know how I find out, because there's no. I'm looking at the serial number, because it doesn't tell you, because it's obviously designed to do it. And there was another thing that rocked up in the studio here as well.
We'll just try everything until it doesn't blow up.
No, because that's not how it. No, because I'll blow it up first go, knowing my luck, and then I don't really understand why producer John wanted this. I don't think I'll ever understand why producer John wanted this.
But
brilliant. There we go, look. So it is the actual handset from a 747 again, was it?
Yeah.
So this is the intercom. This is the one that they do all the talking on, and there's loads of stuff. So it's like door 1 left is number 11. There's like keypad, and so it's basically just, I don't know why he's got an iPhone. I don't know why he needs one of these. And I don't know what kind of special interface you need to plug. I've never seen a socket like that before.
Very expensive one.
Right, okay. Yeah, it has to have a 747 attached to it. Yeah.
Actually, before we move on, just quickly, if for that £150, you can actually get yourself a window section from an A320. So it is, the possibilities are very good.
I say, and international shipping is there as well. So this is genuinely open to anyone who listens to the podcast. We've had a chat with Andrew basically, and we can get stuff sent out to anywhere. So please don't let that be the reason why you're not sending in some feedback. As I say, we want to give this away very soon. So yes, you've got a couple more episodes before we do the draw. So please, if you haven't done so already, podcast at planetalkinguk.com is where you need to send your feedback. It can just be in the form of an email. You can just write us a little bit of a story about how you fell in love with aviation, what your favourite aircraft is. Why not answer that question that we always ask our pilots? If money wasn't an object, which aeroplane would you love to be sat at the controls of? It doesn't have to be in the air at the moment. It can be, it can be retired. So it's basically, the scope is aviation in my life, basically. So please do podcast at Plane Talking UK.
I'm definitely not allowed to enter, yeah?
No, you're not. You are definitely not allowed to. If nothing else, because I love your wife very much. And,
okay.
And she will divorce you if you buy a window.
Oh dear. Anyway, we'll move swiftly on.
Oh dear. You've bought a window, haven't you? Oh no.
Anyway, up next on the show, it's we're gonna start the show as we do each week with a rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So if everyone's ready,
yes. You're not clearly
ready to go.
Let's go. That wall is really bare up there. Anyway, this story comes to us from Carl, who highlighted this to us.
You're going to put a window in it, are you? Oh.
This comes to us from listener Carl, who sent this in. This is on our local rag here in the East Anglia. This is the EDP, 24.co.uk. And Felthorpe Flying Club members have built and borrowed some of the most memorable small aircraft that have ever soared skywards. The collection includes an Isaac Spitfire and its little cousin, a Chiltern DW1 monoplane, a Hawker Fury biplane, and even a replica of the Red Baron Fokker DR1 triplane. And now club members are hoping to inspire the next generation of aviators and aircraft engineers by launching a training course to share their passion for maintaining and flying the machines. The club's chief engineer, 81-year-old Michael Powell, who's 81, said that there's a global shortage of engineers of all kinds, and there's a growing shortage of aviation engineers. He said we wanted to do something about that, so we started off by teaching some of the owners of the aircraft here how to maintain their own airplanes. Mr. Powell said the idea broadened local schools, became interested, and they are now looking to build links with commercial aircraft firms that offer apprenticeships, as well as the International Aviation Academy, Norwich, which is based at Norwich Airport. He said we wanted to include schools and academies because of the shortage of engineers, and it starts there. We are trying to put before people, particularly young people, what's involved in aviation engineering and what opportunities it offers. Mr. Powell said civil aviation in the UK lived in the shadow of commercial aviation, even though it had a £2 billion turnover a year and involved 15,000 light aircraft, whereas there are only around 800 commercial airliners. Mr. Powell said the course would start in autumn with opportunities for work experience and flying. He said participants would learn about the opportunities in civil aviation as well as the Royal Air Force, thanks to another club member, retired Air Marshal Sir Christopher Harper. So if you're interested in finding out more, you can email Mr. Powell at aircraft@inspectorandmaint.co.uk. We'll put the link in the show notes, so don't worry. But you can also call them as well, and we'll put all the numbers in the show notes for you to find out more information on that. But this is a really good idea, because I think most people, obviously, when you think of GA aviation and stuff, you think of hopping out to an airfield, jumping in a Cessna 150 and just flying. But obviously you need engineers to make sure that aircraft can fly.
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think, Armando?
Yeah, this is a great thing. And what this reminds me of is a couple of years ago when I was at Aero Expo in Friedrichshafen, there's a company called Bücher and Funk that is producing replicas of the Jungmeister and the Jungmann. And so they're modern kits that you can build, or you can take to a facility like this where they can help you build them. Like these engineers, I remember when we went up to Seething, there was a bunch of really good airplanes, and some of the guys that are building airplanes there and restoring airplanes are just, what an amazing wealth of knowledge. But companies like Bücher and Funk are out there where if you're actually interested in making your own World War I replica airplane, you can go out and buy your own kit. And if you guys want, we can put that link into the show notes, because it's just kind of a cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Nev? Are you tempted?
Yes, I think I probably am, actually.
Jolly good excuse to come and visit us. That's how I look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Very much so, yeah. But it's really interesting, actually, isn't it? It's good to... I've always been a bit of a fan of sort of, people like this doing things at regional airports like Norwich. And that's really, really interesting, yeah.
It is, yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to the next story now. Obviously, story 2 is always a Ryanair story, and the headline is Ryanair cuts flights from Ireland to the UK. Flying in Ireland is the website, and it's basically, the story goes, Ryanair has announced that it will cut around 1,000 flights between Ireland and the UK during August and September due to the effects of the coronavirus. The airline has blamed the 14-day quarantine requirements for arrivals into Ireland as a cause for the reduction in flights. Ryanair will cut services from Dublin, Cork, Kerry, Shannon and Knock to 14 destinations across the UK, as it says the quarantine rule is damaging travel between the two countries. Ryanair called on the government to remove all travel restrictions within the Republic of Ireland and other EU member states as a matter of urgency. The airline has also pointed out on its statement that Irish citizens are being advised not to travel, yet citizens from Northern Ireland can travel freely to and from the EU without having any quarantine restrictions, even if they travel via Dublin Airport. However, the Irish government has previously signalled that no changes will be made to the quarantine rule until the 20th of July, which is a green list of countries which visitors can travel to and from without needing to quarantine, and is expected to be published soon. So, interestingly, presumably that has now been released, that particular article. So, I mean, without wanting to get too political here, I mean, it's difficult to sort of see the logic behind there being technically no physical border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, yet there are travel restrictions in place. I, as I say, my understanding also is if you are in Northern Ireland and you want to go to the Republic of Ireland, you can just simply drive over the border. Anybody wish to comment on that?
Yeah. Well,
everybody's staying mute on that one.
What we've seen, haven't we, with this pandemic, is that different regions of the UK have had different rules. There's been different situations in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And I always wonder whether this is always to do with public safety or whether there's some political stuff going on behind the scenes. But perhaps there's a bit of each.
Yeah, probably a little bit of both, actually, to be fair. Probably just worth mentioning, so it's not all been doom and gloom. I'm just going to pop a picture up here, actually. It's not been all doom and gloom for Ryanair. This is a message for a little passenger who got his or her teddy bear, who forgot their teddy bear on seats in the boarding area of Turin Airport yesterday on the 8th of July. We want to reassure you that your little friend is safe and is waiting for you at the lost and found area in the airport when you come back. See you soon. And the best thing of all is there we are. Look, when they got back a couple of weeks later, there we are. It's beautifully reunited. The child couldn't be less interested, really, in the camera there, could they? But yes, that message apparently was sent to everybody who was on the flight as well. So it was presumably sent by, because of course with these things, of course, everybody has they have your email address for doing that. And the great news is that the little bear was reunited. Isn't that nice? So it's not all doom and gloom.
Matt, I want to thank you for putting up the reunification photo, because the picture of just the bear and a quote that says, "We want to reassure you that your little friend is safe and waiting for you," sounds a little bit like a hostage video and a proof of life photo.
$1 million.
Yes.
If you want your little bear back.
You did it in an Italian accent. That's what I'd like.
Of course, it's Ryanair, so they do it for £15.99.
Right, okay. Good to know.
Nev, moving swiftly on.
I was going to say, Nev.
Yeah, Nev, the next story for you is all... this is quite an interesting story, Nev.
Yeah, there's always been a lot of discussion over the last few weeks about insurance and what happens with regard to medical expenses and quarantine costs and this kind of thing when flying. Well, on golfnews.com, it says that Emirates will cover its passengers for COVID-19 related medical expenses and quarantine costs when they travel on the airline to and from the UAE and around the world. Flyers on the Dubai carrier can claim medical expenses of up to €150,000 and quarantine costs of €100 per day for 14 days should they be diagnosed with COVID-19 during their travel whilst they're away from home. It's the first airline to offer free global cover for COVID-19 related costs. This cover is offered free of charge to its customers regardless of class of travel or destination. This cover is immediately effective for customers flying on Emirates until the 31st of October 2021. The first flight to be completed on or before October the 31st this year. It's valid for 31 days from the moment they fly the first sector of their journey. This means Emirates customers can continue to benefit from the added assurance of this cover, even if they travel onwards towards another city after arriving at their destination. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Customers do not have to register or fill out any forms before they travel, and they're not obligated to utilize this cover provided by Emirates. Sheikh Ahmed bin Saeed Al Maktoum, president of Dubai Civil Aviation and chairman and chief executive of Emirates Airlines and Group, said, under the directive of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and ruler of Dubai, Emirates is proud to lead the way in boosting confidence for international travel. We know people are yearning to fly as borders around the world gradually reopen, but they are seeking flexibility and assurances should something unforeseen happen during their travel. Any impacted customer who has been diagnosed with COVID-19 during their travel needs to contact a dedicated hotline to avail of assistance and cover. and details of that are available on Emirates' website. Well, that's quite interesting, and I think that's very important for Emirates themselves, because obviously they're very much centrally located, if you like, in the middle of the world, and it's quite an important stopover and a very important destination for a lot of people as well. So I think that this is the first sign of some very intelligent thinking coming out of the airline.
Absolutely. I mean, this is clearly an attempt to reactivate travel, isn't it? This is a way of trying to make people feel a little bit more comfortable about flying. Because, I mean, a lot of people, there are people, obviously, who are concerned about the current situation you're in, but there are also a lot of people who are thinking, the time has come to maybe move on. But perhaps they're not so comfortable about flying, because if you do get, and you suddenly have to be, laid off for 2 weeks or whatever while you wait for tests and you have your, what's the word I'm looking for? Have to have your quarantine. That's it. That's the word I'm looking for. Thank you, John. Quarantine. It's one of those, isn't it, where you people. It's different. You think, oh, I want to go here, but I daren't, because if I do become poorly, I can't afford to be off for 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that there's some creative thinking is required here.
It's brilliant,
and I think this is the first time I've seen some really good stuff. So let's see how that goes, because I think other airlines may be very interested, not necessarily in following suit straight away, but at least looking at how Emirates are dealing with it.
I think it's a really positive step in the right direction, isn't it? To sort of try and generate a bit of, confidence, if you like, in the aviation sector. So if something happens, they'll do it. Well, great initiative.
Armando, next up with you with a slight bit of fire.
Yeah, this story has already kind of made its way through the social media rounds, at least with the video, which I believe Matt is going to play out, or at least a picture. But an Ethiopian Airlines Boeing 777 freighter caught fire at Shanghai Pudong Airport while the cargo was being loaded. The carrier said in a statement that the aircraft registration Echo Tango Alpha Romeo Hotel was on a regular scheduled cargo service from Shanghai Pudong to Sao Paulo and onward to Santiago. Videos and photos on social media show a large part of the freighter's aft section burnt away, and while the fire's cause is unknown, the footage indicates that it had been brought under control. Ethiopian confirmed that the fire had been contained. All ground staff and flying crew were completely safe. Data from flight tracking site Flight Radar 24 showed that the freighter had landed in Shanghai close to noon local time, operating as flight 3738 from Brussels. Syrian Fleet's data shows that the Star Alliance carrier operates 10 777 freighters with an average age of 4.3 years, which I believe this one was just over that. It was 5 years, 10 months old. Ethiopian said that it's working with relevant authorities to investigate the incident.
Any ideas, guys, what you think caused this? Because we were obviously chatting before we went live about the Dreamliner incident with the ELT, but obviously this being further forward suggests possibly something untoward with the cargo.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be an APU fire. I mean, there are fuel lines going back there to the APU. It is a cargo operator, so it could have been cargo being loaded that caught fire. It'll be tough to tell. I know we had a similar incident on a passenger airliner not too long ago where there was a galley fire. So these kinds of things just kind of happen, unfortunately. Yeah, the chat room could have been lithium batteries. It could have been a myriad of things. But the most important thing is that nobody was hurt in this incident, and the fire crews were able to get it under control before any additional damage happened.
I have a feeling they might write this aircraft off.
I would say that you probably have a good chance of getting a window or a piece of metal from this added to your room
vast
there, Carlos.
collection. Yes, absolutely. Airliners Live's got a great point here. Obviously, poor 777, at least it happened on the ground and nobody was hurt. I mean, can you imagine that? I mean, what if it happened when you were in the air? I mean, my goodness, it's it doesn't bear thinking about, really, does it?
Most certainly, it would have been an emotional event. It depends on how fast. We don't really know from the video how long that fire was burning inside. There are, I don't know about fire suppression systems in all cargo carriers, but there are certainly fire detection systems And depending on the phase of flight, you can get the airplane on the ground as fast as you can, or if it's happening in a cruise, flight.
This is what I love about our chat room, Armando. Okay, Stephen Ivy, he says it probably could, it could have been a good curry. That might have been what caused it. And good news for you, as I say. Masha agrees with you, Carlos. Great news, more keychains.
Yeah,
So,
I have a board full of them here.
Yeah, every bright side, hey.
Yeah, I was just looking on the Aviation Herald, Simon's awesome site, and there's no real updates on there. I just wonder whether there have been any updates at all during the course of the week on that. But nothing as yet, but I'm sure they will get to the bottom of what happened with this.
John Jester has actually said in the chat room here, saying that main deck is normally decompression to fight fires. So is that standard procedure?
Yeah, that is a way to do it. That if you remove the oxygen or as much as oxygen as you can from it, then it's certainly an effective way, and it's written into the SOPs.
Paul Tricker has come up with the mandatory "it'll buff out." That has to be done, and also Tony S has said that it can't be a sooty key change. So there we are.
Carlos would still buy it.
He would, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, window is all I have to say to you. Moving on.
Moving on. So the next story. This one is on Flight Global. This has come from Flight Global, and this is all about the Eco-787 Dreamliner, because obviously everything's got to be green these days. We've got to have aircraft that are powered by our thoughts alone to make everything just green. So the Chicago-based...
It's a little more technical than that.
We can think. So the Chicago-based airframer plans later this year to roll out its latest Eco-Demonstrator. This is with Etihad, and this is a 787-10. The company and several partners will use the jet to complete a 2020 Eco-Demonstrator program that will include an evaluation of aircraft noise in flight and of landing gear fairings, intended to quiet the flow of the air around a jet's landing gear. Engineers will also use the 787 to trial technology that digitally transfers air traffic control routings to jets, helping to improve efficiency. Boeing intends to conduct tests in August and September, primarily from its Glasgow, Montana facility. Much of this year's test will involve aircraft noise and noise mitigation fairings. In partnership with NASA, engineers will perform flights to map the 787's noise signature. The jet will be outfitted with 222 dynamic pressure sensors. Using these sensors and 1,006 additional microphones on the ground, the team will examine the 787's noise during flight. Aircraft engineers measure the 787's baseline sound, and Safran landing systems' low noise landing gear fairings will be evaluated. Boeing's Eco-Demonstrator tests will help determine the feasibility of the fairings for use on both 787s and other aircraft. We know engines and fuselages are quite quiet, they said, but on approach, we find that the landing gear is one of the biggest contributors to aircraft noise, Creek says. If it works out, Safran, we anticipate, will figure out a way to work those fairings into the airplane. In addition to the noise studies, Boeing and the FAA will use the 787 Eco-Demonstrator to test ATC's digital data transfer technology. These systems intended to help save fuel by making aircraft routing more efficient. Boeing adds that the 787 will burn a sustainably fuel blend while conducting Eco-Demonstrator flights. So what do you think, guys? Obviously, we all know that engines make noise, but who knew that landing gear makes a heck of a lot of noise?
Yeah, I mean it's a different story, isn't it? Now we were having a chat about this, weren't we? And actually, Armando, I think it's safe to say you quite strongly disagree.
Yeah. So the girls and I were in Atlanta, and as we are av geeks, or I'm trying to make them av geeks, one of the things that we did was
under
we
duress,
stood, we stood at the approach lights, so one of Atlanta's arrival runways, and just kind of watched a couple airplanes. Matt is putting the picture up there. We were as close as you want to be to an airliner without getting blown over or being, what's that? Is that St. Bart's down in St. Martin, down in the Caribbean?
Oh, on the beach there.
I'll tell you what, we were probably 300 feet and all I could hear was engine. I don't know about noisy wheel fairings, but those engines even at idle are pretty loud. And Andy in the chat room is saying, in the cabin, yeah, you can really hear the difference when the gear is down. You can certainly hear the wind rushing, but if you're talking about noise pollution, if you're on an arrival corridor, I don't know about this one.
Now, Nev, what do you reckon?
Well, I don't know about that, but I remember if you stand in the long-term car park near 27 right at Heathrow, and something like a 757 goes over your head, you can definitely hear quite a bit of noise, not as it's landing, but the sort of the wake turbulence kind of noise, which the wings produce about. Let me think. Just as it's touching down, you can actually hear it coming over the car park. But I've never heard landing gear noise at all.
Now in the chat room, Mike, our main man Micah, he's saying that there in Portland, the noise does come from extended gear as the engines are at idle during landing, and it was actually discussed at their airport noise advisory committee meeting.
Wow.
So
Oh, that's interesting.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Ivey is sort of suggesting that actually, if you can't feel the grease, you're not close enough. I mean, there is that. Again, Airliners Live is saying, I agree, though, engines are blooming loud even at near idle. Just listen to an aircraft taxi pass, which is a good point. Yeah. Absolutely.
Actually, we're going to have to make this a rivalry one.
John Jester's actually saying that flaps and gear make the most noise, not the engines.
Really?
That's what John Jester said.
Well,
that.
If he says so, then I am not in a position to argue.
Actually, sticking with green stuff. So in other eco news, actually, the US EPA proposes first ever airplane emissions standards. Actually, I think Armando, you picked up on this, didn't you? The Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, on Wednesday announced it was proposing the first US emissions standards for commercial aircraft. In 2016, the UN International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, agreed on global airplane emission standards aimed at makers of small and large aircraft, including Airbus and Boeing, both which backed the standards. The EPA proposed regulation seeks to align the United States with the ICAO standards. The proposal would apply to new types of designs as of January 2020 and to in-production aircraft or those with amended type certificates starting in 2028. They would not apply to airplanes currently in use. EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler said it was critical that the US adopt the standards because the countries could ban US assembled aircraft if they do not meet the ICAO standards. EPA is expected to finalize the rules next spring, and the Federal Aviation Administration will then issue separate rules to enforce the standards.
It's kicking off in the chat room.
We're definitely going green here, guys.
Absolutely.
Blimey.
Yes. Stephen Ivey is saying it's the noise from the wind passing by the gear, not the gear itself. It's the wind's fault. It's a good point. Lane has suggested banning the wind and therefore Captain Al, which is perhaps a bit harsh.
Well, I love Tony S.'s comment in the chat room that it would be considerably noisier if the aircraft landed without its landing gear.
Good point.
Yeah,
noisy.
true.
They'd be a bit disposable then, wouldn't they? You'd have to sort of throw it away. Yeah. Just throw away an awful lot of money's worth of aircraft and move on. Anyway,
so we're going to stick with the green theme for Matt next, and we're going to go on to electric aircraft.
Yes, I mean I love electric cars. I love the idea of it, but I like the fact that it's on the ground, so that when you do run out of electricity, it doesn't become a very inefficient glider. And this is the thing that worries me about this. So this is PR Newswire. Please feel free, chat room, to put me right. I would be delighted. PRNewsWire.com is the website, and the headline is Electric Aviation Group unveils world's first hybrid electric 70-plus seater aircraft. So Bristol in England is where the the story is coming out of. A pioneering design for a hybrid electric regional aircraft, which will deliver a technical and commercial entry point for sustainable mass air transport, is being unveiled today. Now, when was this? This is back on the 20th of July. The disruptive design, that's a word I've not heard before. The disruptive design is... it has been developed by the Electric Aviation Group, the UK-based engineering and development firm, which expects its first aircraft to be in service by 2028. Now, that's only 8 years away. That's not far, isn't it? The EAG has optimized the latest technology, economics, and operational parameters to create the design for the hybrid electric regional aircraft to ensure it can solve the challenges of decarbonisation and mass transportation. So there's lots of key points here, which I'm just going to sort of skim through very quickly. So the key information about the 70-plus seater airplane is it says whisper quiet operation, reduces noise pollution, innovative airborne battery regeneration to minimise turnaround time, efficient battery integration. Wow. Okay. Thermal management of motors and power electronics. Gear assisted takeoff run. Gator gives rapid acceleration for quick liftoff during reducing the energy requirements. Short takeoff and landing performance enables new route opportunities, affording greater profitability for the operators. Cabin flex design enables passenger operation during the day and cargo operation at night. Suitability for operating from regional airports brings convenience to travellers and gives increased proximity to warehouses, enabling private sector cargo to optimise last-minute terrestrial logistics and delivery systems to reduce carbon emissions. Future-proof designed to accommodate alternative energy sources if available before 2030. Flexibility to transform into an all-electric or carbon neutral as the battery density improves and alternative fuels and associated powertrain technologies mature and become much more affordable. The design, which is being unveiled to coincide with the opening of the FAA Connect, the virtual Farnborough Airshow a few days ago, has received unequivocal support from the EAG's Jet Zero consortium, which includes some of the UK's leading engineering and manufacturing organisations and senior academic advisors. Significant investments have been raised to develop sub-19 seat hybrid and all-electric aircraft, which we believe is the wrong strategy. These small planes cannot meet the demands of mass air transportation or the requirements of decarbonisation, commented Cameron Iqbal, who is the founder and CEO at EAG. Our design is for an aircraft that will initially offer over 800 nautical mile range and launch in 2028, which will be able to carry over 70 people. It will be the first mover in what is a $4.4 trillion market. I mean, it's a very interesting story, isn't it? How do we feel? I mean, I know we've had this conversation before, and clearly, fossil fuels are not the future. I get that, but I must admit, given some of the problems that you get with and I suppose an aircraft is always going to be tested, but I mean, I know people who've got a Nissan Leaf, for example, obviously, so it's got, it's all battery powered, and one of the worst things about it now is as it's getting older, you're lucky if you get between 50 and 60 miles out of it before it needs a full charge, as when you first had it would do 300 plus miles, and that is the thing. I suppose in aviation, obviously, things are much more regulated. It's being watched a lot more.
To get range anxiety in the air. I was just actually in the UK. There's a new advert on TV for the new Vauxhall Corsa, the all-electric one. So this is in the rest of Europe and maybe in the US. This is the Opel brand, but it's actually the same thing. And they are advertising the new all-electric Vauxhall Corsa with a range, ladies and gentlemen, of 209 miles,
Wow.
which I don't find particularly exciting.
And it's not even. You see, the thing is like, right? If they got it to a point where you could charge it, I'm not sorry. We're talking about cars. It is vaguely relevant to obviously what we've just read. But if they got it so that you could recharge it in half an hour, so that you had that 200 plus, that just over 200 miles available to you within a short time frame. But in reality, the technology that's there at the moment, these things don't trickle charge. So I mean, how long is an aircraft of this nature going to need to be plugged in order to sort of complete its flight? Now, I know people will plan around that, and I'm probably opening up a load of hypothetical questions that will have all been sorted out by the time 2028 comes around. But it's just
I think we should get Adam Spink on the show, because he's a massive electric.
He is, yeah.
Isn't he? So I wonder if he might be able to give us a few insights.
I would love one. I mean, the thing is actually genuinely, using the car thing, obviously, a range of about 200 miles for the sort of pottering around that I do here would be fine.
Actually, that would have got us to and back from the air show last week.
It would have done, yes. I wouldn't have recommended having the radio on to listen to the in-air commentary, which is what we would have been expected to do, because obviously that drains the battery. I don't know.
Include a lithium battery fire as well on the way back, maybe.
Only if you ask nicely. It's just like. Hybrid is definitely a good side. John is saying in our ears here. Stephen Ivey is actually saying in the chat room here, I wonder what the hold time will be. Let's see fuel to destination, fuel to alternative, plus 45 minutes of hold, plus taxi time in and out. It's going to be really hard to do. That is a great point, Stephen. He's saying, let alone recharge fast enough to go back out again. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, the FO didn't plug the supercharger in when it landed. This is a great point. As I say again, hydrogen is the only hydrogen. This is Racon here, so it's the only thinkable solution for the big airlines right now. Range is less than half, but at least you can fly. Batteries are not scalable. Same as for cars, more complicated in the air. I mean, it's again, Airliners Live is saying hydrogen is a good option just as long as it's stored safely. I mean, but then I suppose you could say that about aviation fuel and things like that as well, can't you? I mean, there are many a can of worms. I mean, I personally love the idea. I really do love the idea of battery power, because it's a great idea. But I don't know if the aviation industry is. I don't think the technology is there for the aviation industry.
Matt, we'll finish up the story with this. Harbour Air out in Canada has been flying electric beavers for a month, or about a year now.
Really?
They started in December 2019. So that's a partnership with an Australian firm called Magnix. So we can certainly reach out to them, and after almost a year in operation, we can.
Good idea.
Excellent. Right, well, that's Armando's homework for next week.
Homework,
Off you go, mate. Yeah.
So moving on to the next story, and Nev, you've got good news for any of our listeners who live in Brussels.
Woohoo.
Indeed. Now, we all like going to the United States, don't we? It's a fine place to be. But unfortunately, we don't like the 2.5 hours worth of queuing you often get at the border entry. But Brussels Airport is going to get a US pre-clearance facility. Belgium's Finance Minister Alexander De Croo revealed on Wednesday. Pre-clearance speeds up passenger flow as it allows customs and immigration facilities and formalities to be completed before the passengers board their flight to the United States. Brussels would be the third European airport to get such a facility, the other two being the Irish airports, Dublin and Shannon. This will give Brussels an advantage when it comes to attracting passengers, as entry into the US is slow due to complex procedures. Passengers who've completed pre-clearance in Brussels will be treated as domestic passengers when they land in the US. The concept of a US pre-clearance facility in Brussels was first discussed in 2017. According to the deal, which was signed last week, 30 US customs officials will work from Brussels Airport. Start date is yet to be announced due to uncertainty caused by the government's coronavirus restrictions. But that is good news, isn't it? If it's possible to arrive in the US as a domestic passenger, that's going to be a whole load of pain taken away in terms of queuing, especially to JFK or Los Angeles or
Newark
probably
or any of the Yeah. I mean, if I was Ireland though, I might be a bit cross because of course the only place that this is available currently is in the Republic of Ireland, isn't it? It's I do know several people who have flown into like either Shannon or whatever, literally for that reason, to do the whole pre-clearance, so that when they arrive in the States, as you say, they arrive as a domestic passenger. I mean, I don't know. I'd be a bit miffed if I if I was in the Republic of Ireland. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some more of this going on because again, I think the TSA in the US, they have a job to do, obviously, and I think it's there's no doubt about it that the amount of queuing that goes on, having already taken an 8 or 9 hour flight to the US in the first place, possibly, that does spoil the start of your trip. There's no two ways about it. So if they can find a way of mitigating some of that by at least having some flights that can be pre-cleared outside of the US, so that it can arrive as a domestic flight, then that is no bad thing, I would say.
Agreed.
We can go over and see you a bit quicker now, Armando.
Well,
Anyway,
you're going to
moving on.
fly via Brussels, are you?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
All right.
It's flying, isn't it? It's all good.
Amen. Yeah.
Armando, with the next story, and Armando, we're moving to somewhere. I think I know I've flown over, but I think you may well have either flown over this place before.
I think you and I may have actually flown over it ourselves because I used to use it as a waypoint. So Jack Jenner Hall, who lives in Burston near Diss, achieved this feat at Tivenham Airfield on Wednesday, June 22nd, as he celebrated his 14th birthday. He became the UK's youngest qualified pilot.
Wow.
So 14 is the legal minimum age in the UK to fly solo in a glider. And as Jack reached his milestone, family and friends looked on with pride during his first solo glider flight. The youngster, who attends high school and has been flying since the age of 11, said the experience surpassed all expectations. He said, "It was absolutely amazing. The weather was perfect. The experience was great, and it's easily the best birthday present I've ever had. I hope so." He reached about 3,500 feet over Long Stratton, and doing it on his own was incredible, he said. I even had a couple U.S. Air Force tankers fly off my wing, which was very cool. We'll have to talk about that one a little bit, Jack. Jack has been in the Norfolk Gliding Club for more than 2 years, having joined their junior training scheme at Tivenham. He explained that his passion for airplanes had begun at a much younger age. When he was 2 years old, he saw his first Red Arrows display, and his love for flying just grew from there. Phil Sillett, one of Jack's instructors at the Gliding Club, said that his talent for flying had been clear from day one. He said, "Jack has been capable of going solo for at least 6 months, but obviously we had to wait until he could legally do so." Having touched back down, Jack has already set his sights on taking the next steps towards his dream of becoming a commercial airline pilot.
There we go.
Good on him.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's a nice little airfield actually, Tivenham, a glider field. There's normally a lot of activity there on a Sunday. If anyone looks on Flight Radar 24, there's normally quite a lot of gliders flying around Tivenham with their ADS-B out or sending signals. But yeah, nice little club. I think we're lucky, Matt, in the area that we live in here, that we have got a number of friendly and well-run kind of flight schools.
I've just been sent the video actually via Captain Al. Thank you very much for passing that on. As I say, it's courtesy of ITV News, this one. I mean, how exciting, isn't it? I mean, it's Carlos, your mission is to get in touch with him, I think.
Yeah.
We need to find out all about it, don't we?
Yeah, I think we haven't spoken or had a glider pilot on the show. So,
no, I think we should put that.
Oh, we've had
idea.
Nick. Captain Nick is a glider pilot.
True. Yeah, and Pip.
Yeah,
Pip does a
Pip.
lot of gliding, to be fair. Yeah, that's
yeah.
true. Anyway, yes.
He's not 14 though.
No.
No.
Yeah, you can
yeah.
quadruple that.
Yes, at least, yeah. But I tell you what's so lovely is it's nice to have somebody so motivated, literally 14 and bump, there he is, goal
Yeah.
achieved. I mean, that's some drive, isn't it? You know,
You
and
just know that he's going to do it. You know, he's
Yeah,
going to go through, and
absolutely. Absolutely,
good on him.
100%.
Good on him.
Yeah.
So we're going to hand things over to the next part of the show to Nev to introduce, because this is very interesting.
Very special. This.
Interesting. Yes, it's a nice change actually, because a couple of people have said to me, "Would you mind rerunning an interview that you did with the folks at Gibraltar Airport?"
Oh, cool.
And I'm very happy to do that. This actually goes back to episode 244, which was the end of November 2018. And I had the opportunity to visit Trevor Hammond, who's the general manager of NATS at Gibraltar Airport. Now, obviously, Gibraltar's a place that I've visited many times and is definitely a favourite of mine. The actual operation at the airport was an interesting and slightly complex one, as it combines both civil movements and is also the base of RAF Gibraltar for the military operations there. So I began by asking Trevor how these two systems work in practice and if there were any conflicts between them in real-world use.
To be honest, these days air traffic is so similar, both in the civil and the military, that the two combine flawlessly, to be honest. There are absolutely no issues. The regulations are very similar in many respects, and the service we provide is with civil licenses anyway. But as I say, in terms of phraseology and things like that, there are almost no differences. So yeah, flawlessly, I would have to say.
So in fact, you're employed by NATS rather than the RAF.
I'm employed by NATS. It's quite a complex contract in the way it's been managed, because Gibraltar falls under a much wider MOD piece, which is a Marshall Airports contract, which is a process by which the MOD are refreshing the equipment at many of their airfields, and there are a number of air traffic services provided at a number of airfields, and we fall under that contract. So I work for NATS. NATS is contracted to another company called Aquila, and Aquila is contracted directly to the MOD.
All right, interesting. Now, since the construction of the new terminal here in the back end of 2011 and 2012, the whole airport seems to have taken on a new life. What other expansion plans does the airport have? And will that mean that you'll have to update your systems here?
Well, as I just alluded to, the MOD itself is updating a lot of our equipment, the radars, both primary and secondary radar, the radios. So it won't involve a great deal of procedural changes for us. There will be certainly some changes in the way we see the equipment, the way the information is delivered to us. We'll have Mode S on the SSR, for instance, so we'll have more information available. Procedures should remain very similar. Hopefully we'll have nice, reliable equipment, modern equipment requiring relatively little servicing, which will be fantastic. The airport itself is working. There's a huge project going on at the moment to build a tunnel under the eastern threshold of the runway. That will clearly make a huge difference to the operation and the potential for the airfield. At the moment, of course, I'm sure many people will know that we have a very major highway that runs right across the middle of the runway. That highway links Gibraltar and Spain, so all traffic, whether it's on foot, on bicycle, on motorbike or in lorries, everything has to go straight across the middle of the runway, and that of course involves a process whereby every time an aircraft lands we have to close that road and make sure that the runway is available and safe for an aircraft to land on. In about 18 months we expect the tunnel project at the eastern end to be complete, and then all of that traffic will be moved to the tunnel, meaning that there's no impact between aviation and that road transport, which would be fantastic, because of course it means we can operate as many flights as we can possibly attract into the airfield without upsetting the day-to-day workings of Gibraltar in terms of people's comings and goings.
I was going to ask you about the tunnel project. This has been some time coming, hasn't it? Do you think it will totally transform the way the airport operates?
It gives the airport a huge opportunity. It'll certainly transform the way we operate up in the tower, because a large part of the process to make the runway safe for aircraft involves ensuring that we have the road closed, secured, the runway clean of any foreign object debris that may have fallen off a vehicle, or litter that people may have thrown. So clearly that takes some time to prepare the runway for an aircraft to land. All that process will disappear overnight once the tunnel is open, and we could potentially then exploit the runway to its full capacity, which could be as many as 12 movements an hour here. There's quite a long back track, so it does limit us, but 12 movements an hour would still be very significant if we could get anything like that. So huge potential once the tunnel is completed, yes.
Just think about the upgrades that you're thinking of doing, and with technology advancing in the field of GBAS, which is ground-based augmentation systems. Are airlines looking for better facilities at airports, precision approaches and that kind of thing, so they could better utilise what we'll have available?
Yes, of course. At the moment, the way we operate here is we do have a radar. We provide radar services to aircraft and tower services to aircraft. Because of the nature of the approach to runway 09 in particular, which is 90 degrees to the runway, you fly up the Bay of Gibraltar and then turn 90 degrees at about 3 miles. An ILS would be of no value whatsoever on that runway. It would do nothing. So if an aircraft needs a ground-based aid, we do that using the primary radar, and a surveillance radar approach would be flown. Clearly, we have somebody dedicated to providing that service, so we can operate as many of those as there is demand for them. However, the local authority has also now invested in an RNAV approach, so hopefully in the very near future we'll have an RNAV approach available as well. I know pilots like to fly it already. However, at the moment there is a restriction because we're still proving the approach, so they can only fly it in good weather conditions. Clearly, it'll be advantageous when they can fly it in poor weather conditions, and that will clearly facilitate arrivals for aircraft. It'll also mean that they have more stable approaches, fewer go-arounds. Not that we have a huge number of go-arounds, but obviously it's one of the few airports that a modern airline pilot has to fly the aircraft onto the ground these days. So just occasionally, maybe because of the weather, maybe because of the wind, or maybe because we just haven't quite got the lineup correct, we do have the odd go-around because of that.
Just thinking about that approach onto 09, of course, that's a very critical manoeuvre to carry out, because obviously you want to steer clear of the Spanish airspace, I guess. But how do you actually interface with your Spanish colleagues on a day-to-day basis?
Well, the centre is Seville, and every aircraft is handed controller to controller, so there are no automatic processors there. So we communicate with Seville, we have a direct line, and we talk every day, several times a day to them. We have a letter of agreement in place about how we operate and how we interface, and it works very well, to be honest. There are no, fortunately, air traffickers are professionals through and through. Flight safety and expedition is all they're interested in, and we have a fantastic relationship with Seville and work very closely together to ensure that whatever is going on in the airspace in the vicinity of Gibraltar happens safely.
Do you think, with the UK leaving the European Union in March of next year, do you think that's going to have much operational effect on what you do here?
That's clearly a big question that I don't think anybody absolutely knows the answer to. I'd like to think, and I'm pretty confident, that it won't have any impact in terms of the provision of air traffic services. As I said earlier, we've got a letter of agreement with Seville. So we have a modus operandi that we just continue to use. So unless for some reason it becomes politically complex, and I really can't answer to that, I don't see any reason why the way we operate here should change at all.
Yeah, interesting. I think it's all about being professional and working with other like-minded professionals too.
It absolutely is, and I think that will hopefully extend throughout Europe in terms of the aviation industry, and I really don't think it's in anyone's interest to see the aviation industry disrupted at all. We all want to go on holiday, we all need to do business, we all need to fly around. More people are flying than ever. I think in the UK last summer was the busiest year on record. That's only likely to grow. It's only likely to grow around Europe, so it's absolutely in nobody's interest to throw a spanner in that particular works. So I really don't think Brexit will have a major impact, but as I say, nobody really knows the answer.
We're considering doing a Brexit special on the show, but it's so inflammatory at the moment. I think we might leave that until things have settled down a bit next year.
I think that's sensible, yes. And I think the biggest issue is everyone can speculate, but nobody knows the answer. So, and is there much value in speculation? Probably not.
Just thinking about the operations here, in 2016 British Airways A320 had quite a serious bird strike just on its takeoff run. Are birds a particular problem around the airport here, do you think?
They are a problem, as they are at any airport, and obviously different airports have different bird species which are a problem species. For us, the problem is the yellow-legged gull. It's a herring gull, effectively, which is quite a large bird. Fortunately, it doesn't fly in flocks, so you're not going to hit a flock of them. You may hit a bird. I still am confident that actually we have wildlife control on the airfield for every aircraft movement at the fast end of the runway, if you like, dispersing birds all the time, keep particularly that species away. We have a very good relationship with the local authority because, of course, the birds aren't really based on the runway, if you like, or on the airfield. They roost on the rock. They go and feed in the waste tips over the frontier in Spain at various landfill sites. So they tend to be transiting across the airfield, and we can disrupt that. We work closely with the local authority in terms of keeping the numbers down as far as the roosting on the rock goes. We even have a very good relationship with developers, so anyone who's going to develop a building close to the airfield, and in Gibraltar pretty much everything is close to the airfield. One of the hoops, if you like, that they have to go through is to satisfy the airfield and the aviation authorities that their development isn't going to have a negative impact on flight safety, and apart from the obvious things like height and glare from the windows, bird management and bird control is one of the factors that they have to consider, and they have to satisfy the authorities that their building isn't going to attract birds near to the airfield, which may then obviously fly towards the airfield if they're startled. So we've got many processes in place. We are acutely aware that birds are a risk, but I think it's a very well managed risk. It's a well understood risk, well managed. You are obviously occasionally going to be unlucky, but really we have 3 or 4 bird strikes a year close to the airfield, and the majority of them are fairly minor, and the aircraft just continue once they've been inspected.
It's interesting, isn't it, that there's so much attention paid to building regulations and this kind of thing with regard to the airfield. I hadn't realised that was such an important part of the development here.
Yes, and it keeps us all very busy all of the time, to be honest, because there is a lot of development going on in Gibraltar, and we really do have to be careful that we don't in effect make it impossible to operate the airfield, because some development's been approved that seriously infringes the obstacle limitation surfaces, that causes tremendous glare down the approaches at a particular time of year. So there are many factors that need to be considered with every development. But as I say, the developers in Gibraltar are aware of the issue. They're very good, even to the point of raising cranes and lowering cranes. We find ourselves engaged on almost a daily basis with talking with developers about can they raise that crane, what time should it go up, what time must it come down by. So it's a very good relationship. There's an acute awareness that the airfield needs to operate. Certainly,
since I haven't been here for a couple of years, I've noticed a lot more development going on in the last 2 years here.
Yes, it's a bit of a building site, to be honest, when you walk around Gibraltar. I'll say no more than that.
And what was your personal career progression that got you sat here at the tower at ATC?
I was actually born in Gibraltar, educated in the UK, and in my early 20s I came back, and having been an employee of British Telecom in the UK, actually, I left that, came back. At a time when it was announced that the air traffic was going to be civilianised by the RAF, I saw that as an opportunity, and so off I went to do my licences. Fortunately, got my licences, but wasn't returned straight to Gibraltar. Did some work in Llanbedr in the north of Wales, actually operating Jindovics, they're called, which are basically these days would be a drone, which exercise in the areas just off the Welsh coast with the Air Force or the Navy. Spent about a year there, a little bit of time also learning the ropes at Woodvale, and that was with Serco. And then Serco brought me to Gibraltar and worked as a controller, tower and radar here for a number of years, 11, 12 years, before the opportunity to become the manager came along. Did the interviews and became the manager. I live in Gibraltar, it's my home, and I couldn't have a better job, quite honestly.
What other challenges would you say that there are here at Gibraltar?
Water at both ends of the runway. Not unique, of course, there are many airports that have that. We have a cruise liner terminal quite close to the end of the runway, and cruise liners these days, as most people who have been on a cruise will be aware, are enormous. So they're a significant consideration. We again have an agreement with the Port Authority about the movement of the cruise ship, so we work very closely with them to make sure that aircraft movements and cruise movements are deconflicted. we have a number of marinas near the airfield, which again we need to manage, and we have agreements with the marinas so that we don't get vessels with tall masts coming out at inopportune moments and affecting flights. We're always vigilant to these things, but clearly what we don't want to do is have a flight disrupted because something's in the wrong place at the wrong time. So we manage that very carefully. The weather itself, Gibraltar's a very unique microclimate. So in early summer we tend to get a lot of fog in the morning because a warm easterly wind coming from the Levant blows across cold waters. They're still very cold in June, and obviously moisture comes out of that and we get fog. So fog can be a challenge, although not a challenge we can do much about. And probably for pilots, one of the biggest challenges can be the wind. Southwesterly winds in particular blow across the rock, which is only about 500 metres from the runway itself, across final approach, and that can set up all sorts of very difficult and challenging turbulence, from just straightforward lumpiness that you might expect on final approach normally, to a large rotor that sets itself up that creates quite a substantial up and down draft. So what tends to happen is aircraft fly into the rotor if it's there, and you can often see it there by the patterns on the water beneath it. So the aircraft flies through it at anywhere between 4 and 2 miles, and it enters an area of downdraft. So the aircraft gets pushed down. Of course, the pilots put power on to compensate for that, and then hit the updraft, which lifts them above the glide path, and often too far above the glide path. So whilst it's not particularly dangerous, it makes it impossible to land because it's a 6,000 foot runway, 1,800 metres. So at that point, if you are a bit high or too high, certainly in an airline, you're not going to be able to land. The wind can then cause very extreme conditions. We can get water spouts and things, off final approach. Once conditions get like that, nobody even makes an approach. Pilots are warned off.
They're all off to Malaga at that point.
I'm afraid there's a diversion to Malaga. Yes, there's nothing we can do about that. Again, it's always safety first. For us operating as NATS in Gibraltar, and for the airlines and for the MOD, safety comes first. So nobody's going to try and do anything silly and land in those sorts of conditions. And quite frankly, if I were a passenger on the back of a plane, I don't want to be thrown around either.
Exactly. When an aircraft does divert to Malaga, is it the airline's responsibility to get the coaches there for the operator?
Assisted by the local handling agency, it's fundamentally the airline's responsibility. Obviously, if it's a case that they know the weather's really bad and the forecast is really bad, they may well operate straight to Malaga, in which case it's quite a slick operation getting buses. The buses are waiting for you. If it's an unexpected diversion, which may occur for who knows what reason, if it's unexpected, the delay's a little bit longer, but again, it's a pretty slick operation. It will cause you a 3 or 4 hour delay on your flight, but it's not as bad as you might think. And I need to point out that diversions, although I think people have a perception that we have a high number of diversions, we have a low percentage. It's probably under 1% of flights a year divert to Malaga, so it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
So looking at the approach plates to Gibraltar here, some of the patterns that you see, as you've just mentioned, look quite horrific, and it is possible to get a tailwind at both ends of the runway.
That can happen. Fortunately, it's usually a relatively light tailwind, but particularly in the summer, if the wind backs because of the sea breeze, which is basically created by the land heating up and sucking air up, and that causes a south, or rather a westerly wind, to back towards the southwest, or even as far as south if it's a very light wind. What happens, is it obviously hits the rock. The rock almost acts like the bow of the ship, splits the wind, and then the wind curls around the rock, and we end up with possibly a 4 or 5 knot tailwind at both ends of the runway. That's usually actually fine for the airlines. It's just about within their tolerances, so it seldom causes a major issue, but obviously pilots have to be acutely aware that they are landing with a tailwind. The margins are very comfortable. Modern A320s, which is the majority of the flights we get here, but we get 737s as well occasionally, and even 757s very occasionally, can stop very quickly, and they rarely need to apply their full brakes. They tend to be stopped perhaps 2/3 of the way down the runway and under control.
Yes. Does the operation here allow for any GA flying at all?
Yes. I think it's fair to say very few people are turned away. So yes, we get a lot of business jets. That's clearly for those who can afford it, or for those businesses who actually, time is very much money, need to operate that way. We get a lot of business jets here. They represent about 25% of our overall traffic. Smaller GA is unusual. We mostly see it in the summer, and by smaller GA, obviously I'm talking about your Pipers, your Cessnas. They may arrive in the summer, usually Europeans, French or Germans who are flying down to Morocco perhaps, and I think Gibraltar's a good one to have in the logbook, so they'll often request, and they will usually be accepted. Perhaps not in every case, and certainly once the tunnel's ready, I'm sure they will all be accepted and very welcomed.
Yes, it'll certainly transform the operation here, I'm sure, when that happens.
Yes, as you can imagine, it can be quite difficult if you've got 4 or 5 GA aircraft fairly close together. You don't really want to close the road for half an hour and bring Gibraltar to a gridlocked standstill for the sake of landing 3 or 4 PA-28s. It would probably not be an appropriate use of people's time, and it would hurt the economy. But once the tunnel is gone, of course, there are no restrictions then. So yes, hopefully once we have that tunnel, everything will be accepted.
Well, Trevor, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
No, thank you very much, Nev. Much appreciated. Always good to talk about the airport.
If you want to take your knowledge to the next level, sign up for a subscription at the A320 Lounge. Our online video courses combine whiteboard-style lessons with full failure demonstrations shot in 4K in state-of-the-art simulators using a professional production team. Go into your next simulator session with confidence, having seen failures run in real time and with the background knowledge to answer any questions from your instructor. To get more information and to sign up, visit a320lounge.com.
Well, I mean, it's so nice to revisit some of these things, isn't it? And
yes,
you had quite a good visit there, didn't you, Nev?
Absolutely superb. It took a while to tee it all up because you have to get the permission of NATS and the ATC team there as well. But it was really, really good and really interesting talking to Trevor. Of course, that was going back to the end of November 2018. So you'd expect me by now to be saying, oh, and it's all right, guys, the tunnel is now open, but it's not open. And I don't know when it will be open. And nor does anybody else. So I've looked everywhere on the internet from things that saying, oh, yes, it'll be open at the end of 2019. And obviously that's come and gone. So I do plan to make a return visit when it is open so that we can do a bit more video there. But as of
have they made a start on it, Nev?
Oh, yeah. No, it's all the construction's going on quite nicely, but they're not in a rush, I think. Would be
Well, there we are. Yes.
So we'll have to see what happens, but when it's finished, I shall be there.
Quite, absolutely. I think an update on that will be required when it's finished, I think.
Yeah.
And actually, on that note, Nev, my next approach that I do on X-Plane tomorrow will be into Gibraltar.
Oh, good. Well, as long as you do it onto 09, so you've got that horrific 90-degree right turn, and
I'll give it a go.
15 knots of crosswind or something and see how you get on, you know?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll give it a go.
Yes.
Indeed.
So the next part of the show, we are going to hand things over to Armando.
Hey guys, so we do have a few military stories, and we are sticking, at least at the beginning, with our green theme. So if you're ready, Matt, let's hit the button. This first story is from popularmechanics.com. The UK's next generation fighter jet could be powered by electricity instead of jet fuel. That is the word from BAE Systems, the lead contractor on the Tempest fighter, which has left open the possibility that the aircraft could be powered by a hybrid electrical or a fully electrical system. The system would undoubtedly be more environmentally friendly, but there are some doubts as to whether such a propulsion system would be ready for action. by the time the jet enters service in 2035. According to Bloomberg, BAE Systems is examining all options for the Tempest fighter. The company has just brought Williams Advanced Engineering, a motorsports company that specializes in batteries for race cars, to work on the Tempest project. The company will bring its expertise in battery management and cooling technology to the table. The fighter was first announced in 2018 at the RAF Farnborough Airshow. It will be the first British fighter in decades and one of the first so-called sixth-generation fighters, even more advanced than the fifth-generation American F-35 and the Russian Su-57. A large twin-engine fighter, the Tempest will fly equipped with a helmet-enabled virtual cockpit, artificial intelligence, and laser weapons. The name Tempest holds to the UK's tradition of naming fighter jets after ferocious weather, including such famous jets as the Hawker Hurricane, the English Electric Lightning, the Panvia Tornado, the Eurofighter Typhoon, and the Tempest will enter service in the mid-2030s with the Royal and Italian Air Forces. So could the Tempest become an all-electric jet? It's unlikely. As Bloomberg points out, electric flight is still in its infancy. High-performance afterburning turbofan engines, on the other hand, are well developed. Unless batteries can deliver the greater power than fuel for the same weight, there will be no real reason to change. Another problem, an all-electric jet could not refuel in midair like a fighter jet currently does. Fighter jets need just a handful of minutes to transfer a meaningful amount of fuel from a tanker, like the RAF's new Voyager refueling plane. The battery-powered fighter, newly painted, they've had Voyagers for a while. A battery-powered fighter could require much more time to transfer electrical energy from a larger aircraft to a smaller jet. Or you could just put people out on the wings to change out the batteries. That's not to say that the Tempest won't have batteries. The BBC reports that the new fighter will sport laser weapons, likely a rear-facing anti-missile system, but possibly also a forward-facing laser powerful enough to damage enemy aircraft. A laser weapon system will need batteries to store electricity the same way a kinetic energy gun, never called it that, requires a magazine to store bullets. Regardless, the new fighter will likely have power storage capacities beyond current fighters and push the technology along just a little bit farther. Tempest might not be an all-electric jet, but the aircraft that replaces it, sometime around 2060, we should be... What episode will we be on?
Oh, my goodness. I don't know. Actually,
we'll just be holograms in people's living rooms by then.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you here. Tony S. says, will the tankers be dangling jump leads instead of hoses?
Yeah, somebody's still got to plug it in, right? We could just have a bunch of Doc Browns.
Oh, wow. Yeah, what lightning powered. Yeah, that's clearly the future. Back to the future, in fact.
It's certainly adds to the stealth, though. Electric powered fighter jets.
Stealth.
You'd never hear them come towards you.
Good
electric.
Point.
Yeah.
You'd just be a whistle, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, then the landing gear doors definitely would be the noisiest thing on the airplane, wouldn't it?
They're going to have to try.
We've discussed this at length. It'll be the landing gear, without question.
I want to see electric-powered Osprey, Armando.
Oh, my goodness.
Geez. You know what? We are probably closer to that than an electric-powered fighter jet, because electrically driven propeller propulsion is probably a little bit closer than... my wife is laughing at me right now.
Tony S. has actually said no heat signature either. That's worth bearing in mind, obviously.
That is a very good observation, actually.
Good point. Yes. Oh, I don't believe this. John has just looked it up. He reckons we're going to be in episode 2000 and something or other by the time we get to that point.
Okay.
Anybody plan to live that long? I mean, our producer might live that long. I don't know about the rest of us.
I think we'll be handing a baton down to some other listeners by that time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Younger ones, ideally.
Yeah. So, the next story, and this one is from the businessinsider.com. And we all like a bit of kind of joint teaming up. And this one is US, British, and Dutch fighter jets teaming up for point break exercise over the North Sea. So for the first time, the Royal Netherlands Air Force F-16s and F-35As partnered with 4th and 5th generation aircraft from the Royal Air Force and F-15s from the 48th Fighter Wing during exercise Point Blank 20-3 on the 16th of July. More than 60 aircraft took off from home stations and met in the skies over the North Sea for a realistic high-fidelity training environment that included KC-135 Stratotankers and RC-135 Rivet Joint from the Royal Air Force Mildenhall base, along with NATO airborne warning control systems as well. Actually, I do think I saw some of these around our area this week, but the RNLAF Major Marlene Molima Leeuwarden, Air Base's press officer, wow, that's an interesting name, says that we value the excellent opportunity Point Blank provides us to maintain and improve interoperability with our NATO's, or interoperability with our NATO allies. The exercise fully integrates 5th generation technology and capabilities and leads the development and execution of live, virtual and constructive training to support full spectrum readiness. Point Blank fits perfectly into the training program and the road to initial operating capability of our first F-35 squadron. Point Blank is a recurring low-cost exercise designed by the 48th Fighter Wing and Royal Air Force with a mission to prepare warfighters for a highly contested fight against near-peer adversaries. Exercise Point Blank provides UK Combat Air the opportunity to operate alongside the USAF colleagues and in demanding large-scale air wars, said Royal Air Force Air Vice Marshal Alan Marshall, Air Officer commanding 1st Group. During this iteration of the exercise, we were joined by F-16s and F-35s from the Dutch Air Force, as well as a NATO E-3A, thus testing our ability to plan and coordinate across a number of dispersed units in multiple countries. Multilateral exercises like Point Blank increase interoperability for collective readiness, deter potential adversaries, and ensure the skies within European theatre remain sovereign. These exercises are valuable for ensuring our airmen sharpen their combat readiness and increase tactical proficiency, said Colonel Jason Camilleri, 48th Fighter Wing Commander. We will continue to safeguard the US national interests and those of our allies and partners throughout this COVID-19 crisis. And these types of exercises we ensure can meet that priority. Well, that hasn't stopped the Russians from flying over here every now and again, has it now?
No, that's well, they don't fly over here. They don't get this far, do they?
Well, they kind of sort of they're on the cusp of our airspace here in the UK.
Okay, there we are.
Yeah.
Don't know what to say to that, Carlos. Shall we move on? The next.
So, Matt,
yes.
Yeah, next one. We're going to Singapore for this next one.
Yes, indeed. This is the NWAonline.com is where the story has come from, and the headline is Fort Smith, Arkansas site is finalist for Singapore pilot training. So, airmen from the Republic of Arkansas. Sorry, I thought is it Arkansas? I'm sorry. It's the spelling
Arkansas.
that tripped me up. Arkansas. My apologies. Shall I start that again? Fort Smith, Arkansas site is finalist for Singapore pilot training. Let's pretend that first bit never happened. Airmen from the Republic of Singapore could one day train with American pilots in Arkansas, second city, according to the office of the US Senator Tom Cotton. Fort Smith Regional Airport has been selected as one of 5 possible sites to host both F-35 planes and Singapore's F-16 squadron, Cotton's office said. Cotton has advocated for Fort Smith to be included in this economic development and national security initiative for a long time. Fort Smith is a strong candidate for Singapore's F-16 squadron and future F-35 base. Cotton said in a statement that the United States deeply values our relationship with Singapore, and I appreciate the Air Force Secretary Barbara Barrett's consideration of Arkansas as a location for our important defence partnership. I look forward to working with the Air Force and the state of Arkansas to ensure that Fort Smith is a welcome location for its vital new national security mission. Similarly, the US Representative Steve Womack said in a statement that Fort Smith has everything the Air Force needs for the training centre. With our strategic location and strong community, we are primed to support our allies and the next generation of air combat capabilities, Womack said. I look forward to working with Secretary Barrett and my fellow Arkansasians as the vetting process continues. The River Valley is ready to take on its critical defence mission. Barrett signed a memorandum on the 6th of July to establish a permanent Foreign Secretary military sales training centre for 24 to 36 F-35 long-term foreign military sales aircraft and Republic of Singapore Air Force F-16s based within the continental United States. Cotton's office said Singapore's Air Force is an F-35 foreign military sales customer and wants to collate its F-16 squadron currently at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona with its F-35 aircraft at a long-term site.
Matt, so this is one of the things, thank you for reading that, Matt. I know these military stories are super acronym heavy.
It's because I'm a Muppet. That's the only reason. I throw myself under a bus every time I read any story out, frankly. So there we go.
Well, you'll be happy to know that Captain Nick also cannot pronounce Arkansas. He also says Arkansas.
Oh, good. I'm pleased. Weirdly, that's very comforting. Sorry, what did you say, Nev?
I just think he does it on purpose. He knows exactly what he's saying.
Yes, I suspect.
Which is what Matt was doing, right? He was certainly doing it on purpose.
I would love to say that. I just don't have the knowledge to be able to carry that off. It's all right. I'll take it. I know I'm a Muppet. It's fine.
It's okay. I cannot even begin to tell you how many British names I have completely murdered.
We'll talk about Wyndham, shall we, or Wymundham as it's actually spelled. Yeah, absolutely.
This is
Tanya says everybody loves Muppet. I love you, Tanya. Thank you.
Real quick, just a quick commentary on this story. This is something that a lot of people don't know unless you've been in the military. But a lot of our total force for the military, for whatever service it is, it's active duty, National Guard, and reserves, and sometimes the auxiliaries. So a lot of times the National Guard, which is a state-run, federally funded operation, they have these partnerships, these international partnerships with other countries. So it's often surprising where you hear that North Dakota has a partnership with Ghana, or South Carolina has a strategic military partnership with the Philippines or something like that. So these generally go under the radar, but there is a long history of foreign militaries training here in the U.S. with U.S. instructors. So having the Singapore the Singapore Air Force come over to the U.S. and train in Arkansas, especially at this, it takes so much coordination. A lot of it has to go through Congress. The military is a civilian-controlled, military-led operation. Therefore, at the end of the day, we're not just responsible to the American people, but also to Congress and the president. So it takes a lot of coordination, and these congressmen that usually work for years to get something like this into their state. So this is great, and you know what? At the end of the day, it just helps the diversity in some of these communities. You know, Northwest Arkansas is pretty rural, so to have a contingent of Singapore Air Force, individuals in the area is probably going to make the place better.
Absolutely agree. Before we move on to the last story, which I believe you have, Nev, I'm just going to share with you a message that Pip has just put in the chat room here, actually, and he was saying, good news from SafeJets today. They've announced the immediate rehire of all 200-ish pilots and cabin crew that were made redundant a few months back. They even get to keep their redundancy payouts. How cool is that? That's a very positive message. I hope people don't mind me sharing that. I'm sorry to interrupt the military there, but that's the first bit of decent news we've had for a long time in aviation. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's good news. Very good news. Let's hope that
resonates
around the whole
industry.
Things,
Absolutely. Fingers crossed.
So it's safe to say we've saved the best military story for Nev for last. So Nev, take it away.
You know, at the end of the news bulletins,
they try
to find a funny, don't they? And this is one of those "and finally" ones. This is from the LondonGlobe.com. It says that an RAF Puma flew to the rescue after numerous attempts by animal charities because a cow got stuck in a muddy riverbank. And the Coast Guard failed to bring the cow to safety. But Adam Wardrope, who's the station commander at RAF Benson, said, clearly we don't specialise in lifting cows. However, supporting the local community is really valuable training for our crews. And the RAF base at Benson was so excited about it, they tweeted, "Last we heard, HERD, she's being looked after and is recovering after her unusual movement."
Just because we're military doesn't mean we don't have a sense of humor.
That was a sense of humor. Okay.
Good to know.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Tanya's just said in the chat room, "Holy cow!"
Yes, I'm really sorry, guys. There's some great pictures to go with this, and they're not loading for some reason. I'm trying really hard to get them to load, but they won't go.
Just picture a cow hanging from a helicopter. And
that's pretty much it. Yeah, unfortunately, only 1 out of the 5 pictures that were in the folder have loaded for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, it's good that the Royal Air Force are, they're, doing good things.
I mean that's a word. Yeah, well, there'll be a link to it in the show note. I'll try, just chat amongst yourselves for a minute. I'll try and get the pictures
Richard
back.
Adams in the chat room says jokes being made up on the hoof.
Oh,
keep them coming. Actually, come on,
me.
Nev.
Yeah.
Nev, you're the king.
But the trouble is, I normally rehearse my material. I can't just sort of come.
My goodness me, the stuff that falls out of your mouth is rehearsed? Wow.
or plagiarise from somebody else.
Honestly, anyone would think Matt's got beef with this story.
Yeah, I see what you did there. That's fine. Yes, it would appear that my show notes have stopped syncing now, so I'm not even getting the picture.
Shall we just move on?
No. I got to make us all suffer now. I don't care. For goodness sake. Here we are.
You're really milking this story, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. Okay, everyone, stop now. That's this. No, it's everything's.
Matt, why don't you try the other one?
I don't even want to dignify that with a response. I don't even know what's happened. Okay, it's just like no.
Richard Adams makes a good comment in the chat room, but I'll leave Matt to read that one.
Oh, really? Hang on. Just everybody talking about it. No, nothing's working in the studio. I'm really sorry. So it's I don't know. You'll have to just say it.
I can't really. Actually, Nev's quite articulate with words. We'll let him read that comment from Richard Adams.
I think he's probably trying to say we're just talking bullocks.
We'll go with bullocks. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. That's a bit more like it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh well, never mind. Maybe everything will come back together because apparently there was some. Here we go. Hang on. I think we might have something. Everyone. Here we go. I just because I've made everybody wait. We'll go with one picture. All right. Here we go. I'll try and get it to come up on screen. It's like it's nobody will agree that this was worth the wait now. Oh, there we go. Hey, I go. There we go. Look. There's a cow hanging from a rope in a riverbank. I mean,
that's pretty much what it looks like.
That's pretty much it, everyone. Yeah, that's.
I believe you can also watch the documentary Operation Dumbo Drop. Good aviation movie. No, that's not a documentary. It's a terrible movie, actually. But go watch it anyways because we're in quarantine and nobody else has.
Okay, right. Okay, our producer's wetting
Oh
himself here
no,
at the moment.
Lane Street.
I'm still waiting for it to come up. There's no.
Lane Street is in the chat room. Hate to see the delays with so much at stake.
All right. I feel like we should just put everybody out of their misery and let's go to the next segment.
Yeah. So for the next segment, because Matt's obviously busy frantically loading this one up. So for the next segment, we are going to go for our 6th part, because I know we've had some great feedback all about the Plain Truth segment. So this is episode number 6, where Matt and Captain Al are going to be talking about what happens when the captain has the fish curry.
Hello and welcome to another Plain Truce, and today we're going to be talking about pilot incapacitation. Joining me today is the legend that is Captain Al. Hi, Captain Al.
Hi, Matt. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. Yes, I survived another week, as they say.
Absolutely.
That's all we can
you and
do.
Me both.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all we can do at the moment. Now, I'm going to say that the phrase to you here, what happens if the pilot ate the fish? So really I want to know, in the event of an incident, what happens basically if either the captain or the co-pilot, the first officer, is taken ill. What are the procedures involved in that? I mean, presumably there's 2 people in the cockpit for a reason.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head. So we'll just play the end titles and away we go. Right. No, there's a little bit more to it than that. 2 pilots as a minimum to largely mitigate the effects that you've just talked about, which is one of the pilots becoming incapacitated. Now, as it so happens, people tend to think about things like heart attacks, which are obviously pretty serious. Let's not belittle that. But it's actually food poisoning is the most common cause for incapacitation. And it's not a myth. We do eat separate meals. So for airlines that provide catering, you will be provided some form of menu or selection. And the 2 pilots, or 3 pilots if there are more than 2, occasionally there are 4, but we'll keep it simple. The pilots will choose individual meals, so there'll be very little crossover. Now, it may be that one pilot might have the chicken curry and one pilot might have roast chicken, but those food production lines are entirely separate and will almost certainly be made on different days, maybe in different facilities. So if we have a pilot who becomes incapacitated, then assuming that they are still alive, that pilot will take no further part in the operation of the flight. They may well remove themselves from the flight deck, or if necessary, be removed, and the other pilot will take over. Now, it's probably fair to say that aircraft of a large size, a bit like the one behind me, if you're viewing this on YouTube, are designed for 2-pilot operation, but it's perfectly safe for 1 pilot to operate the aircraft. And indeed, it's something that we practice as part of our recurrent sim checks. So the important thing to realize is that there's always going to be at least 2 pilots available. And we take a lot of measures to prevent pilots from becoming ill. So I've talked a little bit about food preparation. There are also guidelines to pilots with regards to, say, for example, not eating shellfish prior to a duty. We all know that shellfish can be a little bit dodgy in certain times of the year if they're not kept well, if they're fresh, or indeed if they're not managed well, if they're frozen. So high-risk foods we attempt to eliminate before duties. Generally speaking, most airlines encourage their staff to eat the airline prepared food, so try to avoid the catering facilities in the airport, and to try to have fairly good food hygiene whilst on board. We do occasionally have, unfortunately, pilots who become incapacitated due to medical conditions, like a heart attack. So, of course, the cabin crew will deal with trying to preserve life. And as I said, 2 pilots, 1 perfectly capable of operating the aeroplane on their own.
So in that instance, say somebody has been incapacitated, would then, let's say, for example, it's the captain, so it's the captain that's been taken poorly, the first officer obviously now assumes command of the vessel, for want of a better word, would they need to stay where they are and stay in the right seat, or would they need to move into the captain's seat?
That's a really, really good question. They would stay where they are, because it would be akin to someone who drives a vehicle with right-hand drive, suddenly just throwing themselves into the other seat and trying to work out exactly where everything is. So when we are checked by the airline in the sim, most of us will be checked in our chosen seat. So captain will be in the left, co-pilot in the right. So no, there's no seat shuffling if a pilot becomes incapacitated. Stay where you are.
So the other question, and the reason why I suppose I'm asking that is because I know obviously at our 200th we were very lucky that we all went to go and have a go in the 737, didn't we, over in Putney there. Now, one of the things I do remember from sitting in the captain's seat to be, the one in charge, is there was a certain little wheel that you had to use in order to steer the vehicle once it was on the tarmac. So, I mean, what would happen there?
Okay, so on Boeings, as the 737 is, you can have a tiller for steering the aeroplane when it's on the ground. On both sides of the cockpit, if you pay extra. On the Airbus product, it comes as standard. So, so if you're traveling on a Boeing and the captain becomes incapacitated, probably what will happen is the aircraft will land, either stay on the runway or just vacate the runway onto the taxiway, because we do have a degree of nose wheel steering with our feet, but it's only a small amount. And then basically the airplane would be brought to a halt, and a tug would then be required to tow the aircraft to its final parking position. On an Airbus, the co-pilot has the technical capability to control the aeroplane, to taxi the aeroplane on the ground. Some airlines, however, don't have their first officers taxi, so it kind of a bit of an insurance aspect. So some airlines allow their first officers to taxi the aeroplane normally and under abnormal circumstances. Some airlines will say you can only taxi under extreme circumstances, and others will say, okay, no, you just don't taxi the aeroplane. So many years ago when I worked for Monarch Airlines, there was one such event where the captain became incapacitated. It wasn't food poisoning, it wasn't a heart attack, it was some sort of viral event, and he felt pretty unwell, so he actually relieved himself of duty. He walked out of the flight deck with some assistance, sat in row 1, and the first officer did a fantastic job, and he landed the aircraft and just brought the aircraft to a halt on the runway, shut the engines down, and they towed the aeroplane off the runway, and claps all round. And the captain was taken off to hospital, spent a couple of nights there, and made a full recovery.
Wow. So, I mean, obviously I have to ask the question here. I mean, I presume these are very rare events. I mean, this is perhaps not that some first officers and captains perhaps don't experience in their entire career, a situation where they end up in charge of the aircraft on their own.
Absolutely. I think I've got just around about 14,000 hours of flying now, and I have experienced incapacitation once, where I had a first officer who about an hour before landing said, look, I just don't feel very well. I'll be okay. So I said, okay, well, I'll speak to you again in about 10 minutes. Just, take a break. See how you feel in 10 minutes. In 10 minutes down the line, he said, I just don't feel well. So, okay, no problems. So you just, push your seat back, take your headset off, and, I'll deal with it from here. Obviously, we've got the cabin crew to look at him. He just had a bug, shall we say. It wasn't full-on food poisoning, but he was a bit clammy. He just didn't feel quite right. So no, they're not very common events at all. So that's I'm flying out. So that's one event in 20 years, and typically I fly more often than the average person.
So, obviously from a nervous flyer's point of view, which is what these segments are all about, essentially, it is, as you say, perfectly safe for the first officer or the captain to be in charge of, for example, an A320 on their own.
Absolutely. I think the key thing to take away is the fact that you have 2 or more pilots.
Right.
So from a licensing point of view, we are the same. Typically, the captain will just have more experience. So any of the pilots who are operating pilots have the ability and capability to land the aeroplane on their own.
Captain Al, thank you. I'm enjoying doing these. I have so much fun recording these with Captain Al.
You must be really proud, actually, Matt, because of the feedback that we've had from not only listeners but also close friends and family and stuff about how well this segment is going. So, well done.
I'm hugely proud of everything that the Plane Talking UK podcast does. I mean, I can't take any credit for it other than the fact that I sit here and press the record button. The success of and the interest is all down to Al. So genuinely, guys, if you would love to get your questions answered, just pop them in the chat room, ping us an email, send us a WhatsApp, +44 757 2249166. That's +44 757 2249166. It's podcast@planetalkinguk.com is the email address. Send in your questions and Al will answer them for you when we do our next recording session for the Plane Truths. Anybody who might be interested, we've had some people who've expressed an interest in being able to access said Plane Truths as a podcast. So we have basically set that up. If you search for your podcatcher for the Plane Truths, Plane Truth, no S on the end, Plane Truth, you can get it from Anchor, you can get it from Spotify. Hopefully it'll be available from iTunes any day now. But most of your average, your standard podcatchers, it is available. So search for The Plane Truth, and you can actually download them as little individual podcasts to have a listen to as well. But as I say, my thanks has to go to Captain Al, who is so generous with his time, and it's brilliant because you just give him a question and he knows what people want to know. It's just fantastic.
Yes, so thanks for that, Matt. Any ideas of what is going to be in next week's one? Is there any little teasers?
I can't remember, but I'm sure producer John will tell me in just a moment. I can't remember.
So we're going to speak to Armando now. Armando, what's coming up on next week's show?
So this morning, I got a chance to talk with one of my longtime friends, John. John was the representative, pilot union representative to the NTSB investigation for the Atlas Air 3591 crash in Houston last year. So we recorded a segment this morning. We're really going to just stick to the results of the investigation and save the process, the actual process of the investigation for a little bit later, because that's something that I think would be really interesting to hear about. But rather than all of us in the podcast community, all of us hosts speculating and doing sort of our own analysis, we're going to hear it from the man himself that was involved in the investigation. So that'll be a 39-minute segment that will air out next week. And I'm
really looking forward to that. It's going to be good. Yeah.
So social media links for the show then, just in case you don't know. Facebook, Instagram, search for us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, Plane Talking UK. Don't forget that all-important WhatsApp number as well. If you want to send us any audio feedback or pictures or any messages at all about the show, what you want to hear, you can send us that via our WhatsApp number, +44 757 22-49166. And don't forget, you can also send your pictures to have on the green screen behind Matt in the PTUK studios. Also, don't forget the website, allthews.planetalkinguk.com. You can go over there and you can find our shop on there. I'm pleased to say that the T-shirts are selling really well. We've sent another one out this week to the US, actually. That's on its way there now to Sue. So hopefully you'll get that soon. So that's going out there. So you can click on there and go in the shop. And you can also get yourself a PTUK mug if you want to have one of the bar PTUK mugs. You can click on the link there and get yourself one of those as well, and be one of the few that have those mugs. It's really good. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get notifications when we go live, and you can also help shape the conversation of the show by joining us in the chat room each week. So take yourselves, don't forget, over to youtube.com if you're listening via the audio podcast, and click on the subscribe button, and don't forget that all-important bell as well to click on to notify you when we go live. On the website as well, the all-important links for Amazon. If you do your shopping with Amazon, which I'm sure we all do, click on that link. That'll take you to the Amazon page, which is linked to the show. You can do your shopping. It doesn't cost you anything, but it gives us a little referral fee for that as well. And also, don't forget on the links on the website for Patreon and PayPal. So if you want to help us to bring you the show each week, you can click on the PayPal link and the Patreon link, and join all our awesome Patreon donators who help to do what we do each week.
There was a question actually from Tony who was asking that we've got an answer from Amazon basically. So if you are using our link, you need to click on the link and then load your basket in order for it to qualify. It sort of only works on qualifying purchases. So if you are going to very kindly do your shopping using Amazon, make sure you click on the link first and then load your basket with the items that you want to use, that you want to buy.
It's good. I like that link. I use it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we had another payout this week. So thanks, guys. Much appreciated.
Do you have actually, Matt, on the subject of that?
No, I'm not going to
finish,
look.
do you ever look?
No,
you need to.
Absolutely not. I am so terrified about looking about what is. No is the short answer.
So that is where we're going to bring episode number 328 to a close. Massive thanks to everyone who's joined us in the chat room tonight. Big thank you to you all, and to everyone who downloads the show as an audio podcast as well. So have a great weekend, whatever you're doing. Stay safe.
Nev, what are you up to this week? Anything fun?
Nev, what are you doing?
Back to work full time. I'm pleased to say Monday, so that's great news. Not much flying just yet, but that will come, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Carlos, what are you up to?
This week I shall be warehouse-based Monday, which is great. Yeah, get back in my office again, and all the rest of the week I'll be driving the lorry.
Never mind. Armando, what are you up to? Deathly silence. Excellent.
Deathly silence.
Actually, yeah, the opposite of last week. Between now and the next recording, I have 5 days of flying and 1 day of reserve. So
very cool. Busy. Well, busy time for Armando, and I'll be attempting to sell wine. So there we are. That's it. That's everybody's weeks in a nutshell.
Excellent. So that's it then. Before we go, big thanks to our producer, John, for all his work in the background. As always, big round of applause to you. Thank you, John, for everything. And that's it then. Episode 328 in the can. Thanks, everyone. Take care. So from me, Carlos, here in my home studio. From Matt, in the PTUK Master Studio. From Nev, in his Buckinghamshire studio. And from Armando, over in his Charlotte studio. Take care. Have a great weekend. And goodbye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.